Hey guys, welcome back for another show. This one is pre-recorded. This is for March the 6th. I won't be in this my little project studio because I'll be working through the time that I normally go live. However, with that being said, after this pre-recorded show, I should be back into the swing of things. Now I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I've last few shows I've talked about you know some heavy things from internet security to crazy people on the internet, how to deal with inappropriate things like that. I've even had a calendar events, but I've not had a chance to put that together for this one. So this one here is more of a review type thing. Because I know that weather's starting to warm up, so people are going to want to start getting outside more and different things like that. So um, I'm going to toss a few ideas towards your way. See, one of the things that I deal with is like the paranormal type stuff. I've been to multiple places. I'd have to get my notes out just to remember everywhere I've been. Yes, and I'll read different books and things like that too. But I try to stay region specific, which means West Virginia, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and Indiana. Basically where you could make a day trip out of it if that's your thing, depending on where you go. With that being said, I'll be discussing several books, and most of these are going to be state specific to Ohio, with a few really good authors that I'll be talking about. Ironically, if the show gets big enough, I'd like to have a few authors in on the show too. Um, but that's maybe down the road a little bit. So one of the books, the first book I'm going to kind of introduce is Ohio's historic haunts. Um, sorry about the thing. Hopefully you can see that now. Um, this book was put together by James Willis. And Ohio has a long history. Now our history goes back to the establishment of the Northwest Territory through the Northwest Ordinance. And then obviously Ohio became a state in 1803. And as um, the state started coming together, we had to come up with a penal system, which was ruthless and efficient in many ways. Um, but again, I'm not going to dig into that. So one of the places that I like to frequent on a fairly regular basis is the Ohio State Reformatory. Now, this is also known as Mansfield Reformatory and OSR. Um, that is located in Mansfield, Ohio. Now, the interesting thing is that this, prison was a middle of the road type thing, basically trying to rehabilitate, criminals before they get to the big house, because like once they get to the big house, as they called it, it's pretty much end of the road at that point, especially if you were, brought up on murder charges and things like that. Yeah, this reformatory has an interesting history, both as you know a prison for the state, and it has film history to it. Um, what I mean by film history is there's a couple of scenes in Air Force One that was filmed there. Then Shawshank Redemption, which came out in '95 ish, I think, after the prison closed. was filmed there and all around the area of Mansfield. Um, if you haven't seen Shawshank Redemption, it's a pretty good, movie. It's got oh man, I can't remember. It's got Morgan Freeman, I think's in it. And I again, like I said, it's been a minute since I've seen the movie. But anyway, so there's you know film locations also all around Mansfield that were involved in this movie as well. On top of that, they have turned part of the prison into a museum. Now the nice thing about the museum, that last time I was there, they had old Sparky, which is the electric chair. I think it's the real one, or it might be a duplicate. I can't remember it. Like I said, it's been a minute, so I'm planning on going back. Hopefully, you know, here, soon. So with that being, as it is, give me just a moment, guys. I, got a phone call. Yeah, ain't nothing important. Anyways, so the reformatory has a long history now. Prior to the reformatory being built, there was a Civil War training camp on the property. Obviously, after the war was done, they dismantled the camp and all that good stuff. And then they started building the prison. Um, this you know book that I'm flipping through. Here is a picture of the reformatory. Hopefully, y'all can see it. Um, that's now these pictures are a little old. Obviously, a lot has changed in terms of different things. Um, there's a photo here that shows a typical you um, prison cell, things like that. Um, this particular prison, now granted, there was never any state sanctioned executions. Okay, now I word it that way because in these types of prisons, murders still happen. All right, and it would be inmate upon inmate or you know guards and the inmates. You know how it can get. Well, so there is a book out, and I have to find it on it's on one of my shelves somewhere that Sherry Brake wrote. Really good book, really you know detailed in a lot of the history. It covers the prison. It also covers you know the area of Mansfield, which Mansfield has an interesting um hold on just a minute. Interesting history in of itself because a lot of Native American activity, things like that. And Sherry's book kind of touches on some of that. Just to give you an overview of the area. So, definitely a phenomenal author. I read several of her books. Um, she has, one on the reformatory. She's done one on the I think she's done one on the Trans Allegheny psych ward. I know she's done one on the um, Moundsville Penitentiary, and that's a pretty thick book. It took me a hot minute to get through it, but that's because there's a lot of history. Because the penitentiary had covered you know many years. But anyways, that's another discussion for another day. So, anyways, phenomenal author. I happen to have one book I know of hers that was signed by her. Um, but I would encourage you to go on Amazon and order, the books that she's done because she's really, like I said, I like how she approaches, the paranormal aspect of it, because she lays the groundwork, the history, the stuff that can be proven scientifically, and verified. Then, you know, after she lays the groundwork, then goes into some of the paranormal aspect of it. Anyways, so back to the reformatory itself, because I could go down a rabbit hole on this. Um, the reformatory, like I said, was a prison, middle of the road, and it was self sufficient. What that meant was they had their own power plant, they had their own sanitation systems. They had everything that they would need to be self sustaining. They even had farms that they would allow trustees to go out to. Trustees are kind of well behaved prisoners. They were given a little extra freedom. Um, and then this reformatory also has a chapel, a really nice chapel. Well, it was nice when it was active, but anyways, and they've got photos and artifacts and things like that from that part of it as well. And then once you go through like the main part of it, then you can walk out into the cell blocks, and the reformatory has a 6 tier, standing, cell block. I believe it's the largest one in the world at this point. Um, and you get to go down, all the tiers, um, and you get the, up close and personal, on the being go in and out of the cells and things like that. Um, then you know, there's a lot of paranormal activity that happens there. There was a inmate, and I'm not going to tell you what cell it is or anything like that, that soaked himself in turpentine or paint thinner, set himself on fire. They drug him down the catwalk, and just chunks of him were, falling off. Um, so that was a very, traumatic event. Then, um, you go down into the, you know, shower room, things like that. There's activity that's, been, documented on video cameras, EVPs even. Um, I've had, experiences there. But I will say this, that the ladies are going to be more likely to have something happen to them, because it's an all male prison, obviously, so you can figure out the rest for yourself. Anyways, um, so then you go, you know, across the, way. Then there's a little they have a section of the pipe they use in, Shawshank Redemption on display, where Andy Dufresne was, crawling out the sewer pipe. Um, and then there's a few other things that's in display down there. Then you go down into the, you know, shoe or the hole. Um, and there was a, guard that was, murdered by some inmates. The guard's name was Frank. And since I mentioned Frank, so this is interesting. So me and the other half go down, the reformatory one day. We made it an all day thing. We get down into the hole, and we conduct some EVP sessions. Uh, EVP sessions, electro voice phenomena. Anyways, so and obviously, we didn't, you know we reviewed everything when we got back, I guess is what I'm getting at. And we came across the name Frank. Well, we didn't think a whole lot about the name Frank, because, there's so many inmates there. It very well could have been an inmate. Well, so, we go through all the evidence, and I start, doing the, report, as it were. And then we're sitting down one night, and we're watching Ghost Adventures. This is with Zach Bagans, which I think's well, anyways, I won't get into that. And ironically, they were doing a show on the Mansfield Reformatory, which naturally that intrigued us because we'd just gotten back, not too long, and ironically, they made contact with the same individual named Frank. Well, that we were like, holy shit, that just validated our experience. All right. Well, I'm like, okay, and we really started tuning into it. Then we found out that Frank was a prison guard that was murdered after they opened up, the hole to get some of the inmates out. I guess they rushed him and then they murdered him at that point. So that's just one of many experiences that we had, but to have that experience validated, not only based on findings, but the findings that we had that were validated on the show, and then the findings were validated by historical fact that there was a guard named Frank that was murdered in the location that we had our experience, that was validated by a television show that was validated by historical data, and everything else was just mind blowing. So that was, I don't know if I want to call it an eye opener or anything of that sort, um, but it was definitely a eureka moment. So yeah, and that's the paranormal aspect of it. One of the things that I liked about the reformatory was the architecture. The architecture, they we used to build beautiful buildings. I mean the decoration, the Art Deco. I mean the whole thing in general was a work of art. Now we just build square boxes that are depressing and rather dull. So no wonder people have a tendency to end up with depression and things like that, because the whole idea of the artwork and stuff like that can take a bad situation and make it a little less bad. But anyways, that's beside the point. So the reformatory is a nonprofit organization. Um, they've been around for a while. They're actively restoring the prison. Um, so all the money and stuff that they get through admission, through the gift shops, and the various events that they have throughout the year goes back into the prison for restoration work, which I think is really good that they're trying to preserve you know that part of our history. I wish that we could have preserved the state penitentiary that was in downtown Columbus, where the Nationwide Arena is at, but unfortunately, it was lost to history because of development and things of that sort. So I will say that's just one of many places. And there are many books out there that you know have local stuff for Ohio. This Ohio Historic Haunts has all sorts of things that was you know that's here in Ohio. And the nice thing about this book, it breaks it up into the five regions. In Ohio, we have the Northwest. You have the Northeast. You have Central. Then you have Southwest and Southeast. Southeast. Zanesville is listed in there. So for those that are near there or whatnot, you got Central Ohio, which I mentioned. The Reformatory. The Northeast Ohio, you've got Steubenville is listed there, and then Northwest, you've got um, all sorts of things, especially in Sandusky and Toledo. I mean, so if the paranormal is your thing, this is one of many um, books that you can acquire that would start your start you on your journey, I guess. Because not only this book gives you a history of the location, and then it also will have a section for some of the documented experiences that have happened. Now, obviously, this book is not all inclusive, and that book is not necessarily guaranteeing you that you will have something happen to you while you're visiting these locations. If you have something happen to you, definitely drop a comment or get in contact with us, because you know we are a paranormal group, more or less, and definitely be interested in hearing your experiences. Um, you because that's a good conversation to have over coffee or drinks, things like that. But you can always, drop an email. If you don't want to share your comment openly, you can send me a direct message on my Facebook channel, or I think YouTube might have that option. I'm not entirely sure, and I will not, share any information without your, you know, consent. And even then, I will most likely change the names of people involved. But anyways, so that's going to about wrap up the recording for you know this show. Just keep in mind there's the QR code for the PayPal donations. Then as the site gets going, I'll be adding Patreon and things like that. And any revenue that is you know raised or brought in is will be rolled back into the channel. Um, so so with that being said, I hope that everybody is staying safe out there, and hope you guys are doing well. And I will hopefully be back live Friday at the scheduled time. Stay safe,